Federal agents shot a married couple in Portland Thursday during what Border Patrol called a targeted vehicle stop. Oregon officials are now launching their own investigation into the incident that has sparked renewed outrage over Trump's immigration enforcement tactics. Federal officials claim the couple tried to run over agents and are linked to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Portland's mayor questioned the government's account, saying, quote, "There was a time when we could take them at their word. That time has long passed." This shooting comes just one day after ICE agents fatally shot a woman in Minneapolis, prompting both mayors to demand federal agents leave their cities. As investigations continue on both coasts, the question remains, is this the kind of enforcement America needs? Big oil CEOs just met with Trump about Venezuela, but they're not giving him what he wants. The oil industry is expressing serious skepticism about investing tens of billions to restore Venezuela's crumbling infrastructure. Here's what they're demanding instead. Oil executives are refusing to make firm investment pledges, calling Venezuela too volatile. They're demanding guarantees for employee safety, rule of law, and protection from asset seizure. The country's history includes rampant theft, hostage-taking, and foreign companies losing billions in seized assets. The math is staggering. Restoring Venezuela's oil production would cost over $10 billion annually for more than a decade. Companies want government-backed financing, political risk insurance, and compensation for past losses before they'll consider returning. With Venezuela's massive oil reserves at stake, it makes you wonder, is the potential reward worth such enormous risks? Today, oil executives are meeting with Trump about Venezuela, but they're not bringing their checkbooks. Despite massive oil reserves worth billions, Big Oil is saying no to Trump's investment pitch. Here's why they're refusing to commit. Oil companies want guarantees before investing the tens of billions needed to rebuild Venezuela's crumbling infrastructure. They're worried about employee safety, equipment theft, and the country's history of seizing foreign assets. The risks are simply too high right now. The potential payoff is enormous. Venezuela has some of the world's largest oil reserves. But restoring production would take over a decade and cost more than $10 billion annually. With so much money and risk involved, would you bet on Venezuela's stability? Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is preparing National Guard troops for potential deployment following a fatal shooting by an ICE agent. The move sets up another possible confrontation between state and federal authorities over military control, echoing previous battles during Trump's presidency. President Trump has repeatedly tried to federalize National Guard troops in Democrat-run cities, calling them lawless. But courts have blocked these efforts, ruling there wasn't enough evidence that federal agents needed military help to enforce the law. Walz warns residents not to give Trump an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act or deploy federal troops. He emphasizes that Minnesota's National Guard members are local teachers, business owners, and community members. With tensions rising, this could test the limits of presidential military authority. How far should federal power extend into state matters? Breaking news from Washington. President Donald Trump has announced the cancellation of a previously planned second wave of attacks on Venezuela. The surprise announcement came through a Truth Social post early Friday morning, citing unexpected cooperation from the South American nation. The announcement represents a significant shift in US-Venezuela relations. Trump's social media post stated that the attacks were canceled due to Venezuela's cooperation with the United States, though specific details about this cooperation remain unclear as this story continues to develop. This developing story raises questions about what prompted Venezuela's sudden cooperation and what it means for future diplomatic relations. As more details emerge, the international community watches closely. What do you think led to this unexpected change in Venezuela's approach? The Bureau of Labor Statistics releases today's jobs report at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and the numbers paint a troubling picture. Economists expect only 55,000 jobs were added in December, marking 2025 as the worst year for hiring outside of a recession since 2003. American workers are feeling increasingly hopeless, with the perceived probability of finding a job hitting a record low of 43.1%. Only healthcare and leisure industries are thriving, accounting for 84% of all job gains, while representing just 22% of employment. The hiring recession was intensified by President Trump's tariff announcements in April 2025, creating widespread uncertainty. However, some economists see hope as December layoff announcements fell to a 17-month low, suggesting the worst of the slowdown may be behind us. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases December's jobs report, and economists are predicting devastating news. With estimates of only 55,000 jobs added, 2025 is on track to be the worst year for hiring outside of a recession since 2003. Americans' job-finding confidence has plummeted to a record low of 43.1%, while fears of losing work have soared. Only healthcare and hospitality sectors are hiring, creating what economists call a K-shaped economy, where most industries face a hiring recession. The labor market slowdown intensified after President Trump's tariff announcements in April, stifling hiring across most sectors. However, some economists see hope, with December layoff announcements hitting a 17-month low, suggesting the worst may finally be behind us. Luigi Mangione returns to federal court Friday as his defense team fights to save him from the death penalty. The 27-year-old is accused of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a Manhattan sidewalk in December 2024. His lawyers argue key charges should be dismissed over technical legal issues, claiming the stalking charges aren't violent crimes. They also want Attorney General Pam Bondi to recuse herself due to potential conflicts of interest with United Health. The case has sparked nationwide debate about health care, with over $1.4 million donated to Mangione's legal defense fund. Federal Judge Margaret Garnett will hear arguments that could determine if the death penalty remains on the table. The 2026 midterm elections will be the most consequential in decades. Starting with primaries on March 3rd, these races will determine whether Republicans keep control of Congress, or if Democrats can stop Trump's agenda and launch investigations into his presidency. Key battlegrounds include Texas, where Senator John Cornyn faces primary challenges, and Georgia, where Jon Ossoff seeks re-election. Ohio's Sherrod Brown attempts a comeback against John Husted, while Maine's Susan Collins faces her toughest challenge yet from Governor Janet Mills. With Democrats needing just 3 House seats and 4 Senate seats for control, these elections will shape Trump's final 2 years and set the stage for 2028, the first presidential race in 16 years without Trump on the ballot. 2 American cities are in crisis after federal immigration agents shot civilians this week. In Minneapolis, an ICE officer killed a 37-year-old U.S. citizen, sparking massive protests demanding an end to Trump's immigration crackdown. In Portland, Oregon, Border Patrol agents hospitalized a married couple after shooting them during a traffic stop. The agents claim the suspects tried to run them over. Portland's mayor is now demanding ICE suspend all operations. The White House is defending both shootings as tensions escalate nationwide. These incidents highlight the growing conflict between Trump's aggressive immigration enforcement and local communities pushing back against federal operations in their cities. RFK's new dietary guidelines are flipping the food pyramid upside down, putting protein and dairy at the top while warning against processed foods and sugar. But if you think major changes are coming to your grocery store, you're wrong. The changes already happened years ago. Major food companies like PepsiCo, Kraft Heinz, and Kellogg have been reformulating products, removing artificial ingredients, and adding protein to everything from Pop-Tarts to Starbucks cold foam as consumers demanded healthier options. More than half of Americans already prioritize healthy food choices, and 76% prefer using food over prescription medications for health. The new guidelines simply reinforce what consumers and food companies have been moving toward for years. RFK's new dietary guidelines are flipping the food pyramid upside down, promoting protein and dairy while warning against processed foods and sugar. But if you're expecting dramatic changes at your local grocery store, you might be surprised to learn they've already happened. Major food companies have been reformulating products for years as consumer demand shifted toward healthier options. PepsiCo is adding protein to snacks. Kraft Heinz split its company to focus on healthier foods, and even Starbucks now adds protein to cold foam. More than half of Americans prioritize healthy food choices, and 76% prefer using food over prescription medications for health. The grocery transformation reflects years of changing consumer preferences, with healthy products showing the fastest growing sales across most categories. RFK's new dietary guidelines are turning the food pyramid upside down, promoting protein and dairy while warning against processed foods. But if you're expecting major changes at your local grocery store, you might be surprised to learn they've already happened. Consumer brands have been adapting for years as Americans increasingly choose healthier options. PepsiCo is boosting products with fiber and protein, while Kraft Heinz is removing artificial colors and splitting into two companies to focus on healthier alternatives. The protein trend is everywhere, from enhanced pancakes to Starbucks adding protein to cold foam. These guidelines simply reinforce what consumers already know and what food companies have been delivering for years through this natural market evolution. RFK's new dietary guidelines are flipping the food pyramid upside down, promoting protein and dairy while warning against processed foods and sugar. But if you're expecting major changes at your local grocery store, you might be surprised to learn they've already happened. Consumers have been shifting toward healthier foods for years, with over half of Americans prioritizing healthy options when shopping. Major companies like PepsiCo, Kraft Heinz, and Kellogg have already reformulated products, removed artificial colors, and boosted protein content to meet changing demands. The guidelines simply reinforce what consumers already know about protein being beneficial and avoiding excessive sugar. Food companies keep their finger on the pulse of consumer preferences, creating a continuous feedback loop between what people want and what gets produced on store shelves. Pope Leo XIV delivered a stark warning to world diplomats, declaring that war is back in vogue. Speaking at the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, America's first pope condemned the complete undermining of international borders established after World War II. The Chicago-born pontiff expressed concern about escalating tensions in the Caribbean Sea and American Pacific coast, calling for respect of the Venezuelan people's will. His 43-minute address came just days after the U.S. military captured Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro. Pope Leo warned that diplomacy seeking consensus is being replaced by force-based approaches. He emphasized that international humanitarian law must always prevail over the ambitions of belligerents, drawing parallels to the 5th century and St. Augustine's teachings about societal upheaval.